Imagine for a moment that there is another version of you right now existing in a parallel reality. A version of you that has access to higher wisdom, deeper truths, and profound insights that go beyond the limitations of this current 3D experience. This version of you, existing in the fifth dimension, has a message. They've been trying to communicate with you, trying to get through the noise, the distractions, the endless pull of daily life in the physical realm. But today, right here, right now, I'm going to help you tune into that message. You might be asking yourself, what is the fifth dimension? And why should I care about what a parallel version of me has to say? These are deep questions, and they're important. The fifth dimension is not some far-off place in space. It's not a distant galaxy or a mystical realm that only a few can access. It's a state of consciousness. It's where time collapses, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. In this dimension, the limitations of the physical world dissolve, and you are free to experience a reality where your higher self, the version of you that is fully aligned with your soul's purpose, can guide you. Right now, you live in a world where the third dimension dominates. You experience life as a series of linear events, cause and effect, beginnings and endings, birth and death. But what if I told you that all of those limitations and boundaries are illusions? What if I told you that the version of you existing in the fifth dimension already knows the answers to the questions you've been asking? What if that version of you is whispering insights that can transform your life, but you haven't been able to hear because your mind is too focused on the noise of daily survival?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
Here's something to sit with. What if the wisdom you're searching for is already within you, but it exists outside of your current perception? The parallel you, existing in the fifth dimension, is trying to tell you that the answers aren't out there, they're in here. In your heart, in your soul, in the depths of your being. But to access them, you have to shift your consciousness. You have to go beyond the 3D matrix, beyond the limitations of your mind, and tap into the infinite nature of your being. How do you do that? How do you connect with this parallel version of yourself? The first step is to quiet the mind. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things to do. Your mind, right now, is constantly bombarded with information, opinions, and distractions. Social media, the news, the pressures of work, the expectations of society, they all create a constant background noise that keeps you trapped in the third dimension. To hear the message from your fifth dimensional self, you need to find moments of stillness. You need to create space for that higher wisdom to come through. Have you ever noticed that your most profound insights often come when you're not actively thinking? Maybe it's during a walk in nature, right before you fall asleep, or in those quiet moments when you're simply sitting in stillness. That's because when you quiet the mind, you open a channel to higher dimensions of consciousness. You create the space for that parallel version of you to communicate. But stillness alone is not enough. You must also cultivate trust. You must trust that this wisdom exists. You must trust that there is a version of you that sees beyond the limitations of your current reality. And most importantly, you must trust yourself to receive and act on that wisdom. This is where most people get stuck. They get a glimpse of higher wisdom, but then their logical mind, conditioned by the 3D world, starts to question it. That can't be right, they think. That's too far-fetched. That's not practical. But the truth is, the fifth dimensional version of you doesn't operate by the rules of the third dimension. What seems impossible here is not only possible there, it's inevitable. Take a moment to reflect. What would your life look like if you fully trusted the wisdom of your higher self? What decisions would you make? What risks would you take? What fears would you let go of? The parallel version of you is urging you to stop living in fear, to stop playing small, to stop doubting your own power. They are trying to show you that you are limitless, that you are capable of so much more than what the 3D world has led you to believe. But let me be clear, this isn't about escaping the 3D world. It's not about abandoning the physical realm and living in some abstract spiritual space. No, it's about integrating the wisdom of the fifth dimension into your current life. It's about bringing that higher perspective into your everyday decisions, into your relationships, into your work, and into your sense of purpose. The parallel version of you is not separate from you. They are you. They are the version of you that has already mastered the lessons you're currently learning. They are the version of you that has transcended fear, doubt, and limitation. Now, let's get practical. How do you actually make this connection? How do you start receiving this wisdom on a daily basis? The first thing you need to do is cultivate awareness. Start paying attention to the subtle signs and synchronicities in your life. The fifth dimensional version of you communicates not just through direct thoughts, but through feelings, symbols, and experiences. Maybe you keep seeing the same numbers over and over again. Maybe you overhear a conversation that seems strangely relevant to a question you've been pondering. Maybe you have a dream that feels more vivid than usual. These are not coincidences. These are messages. But here's the thing, you have to be open to receiving them. You have to be willing to see beyond the surface of things. When you start to notice these synchronicities, don't dismiss them. Instead, ask yourself, what is the message here? What is my higher self trying to tell me? The more you ask, the more you'll receive. It's like tuning a radio to the right frequency. The wisdom is already there, but you have to adjust your awareness to pick it up. Now that you've begun to tune into the whispers from your parallel self in the fifth dimension, let's talk about how you can break through the illusions that keep you trapped in the 3D world. The third dimension, where most of us live our day-to-day lives, is full of limitations. These limitations aren't just physical, they're mental, emotional, and spiritual. They create the illusion that you are separate from everything else, that you are finite, and that you are bound by time, space, and circumstances. But here's the truth. Those limitations are not real. They feel real because you've been conditioned to believe in them. From the moment you were born, you've been taught to see the world through a specific lens. You've been taught that there's a right way and a wrong way to live, that success looks a certain way, that your worth is determined by external achievements. You've been taught that the material world is the only reality, and everything else, intuition, spiritual wisdom, inner knowing, is secondary or even imaginary. But what if I told you that everything you see, everything you experience in this 3D world is just a reflection of your own consciousness? The fifth dimensional version of you already knows this. They understand that the physical world is like a mirror, reflecting back your beliefs, your emotions, and your energetic state. This means that if you want to change your reality, you don't need to work harder or push against the external world. You need to shift your inner state. You need to dissolve the illusions that keep you stuck in the 3D mindset and open yourself to the expansiveness of the fifth dimension. But how do you do that? How do you break through the illusions? It starts with awareness. You need to become aware of the beliefs and patterns that are keeping you trapped. These are the invisible barriers that hold you back from stepping into your highest potential. Maybe you believe that you're not good enough, that you don't deserve success, or that the world is a dangerous place. These beliefs create your reality. They shape the experiences you attract, the opportunities you see or don't see, and the way you show up in the world. Ask yourself, what beliefs are limiting me right now? Take a moment to really feel into that question. What stories have you been telling yourself about who you are and what's possible for you? Are you living from a place of fear, scarcity, or doubt? If so, it's time to start questioning those stories. The fifth dimensional version of you is constantly trying to show you that these beliefs are not true. They are illusions, constructs of the mind, designed to keep you playing small. When you begin to question these beliefs, you start to dissolve the walls that separate you from the fifth dimension. You begin to see that the only thing keeping you from accessing higher wisdom, abundance, and love is your own mind. It's not the world outside of you that needs to change, it's your perception of it. The fifth dimension is not a place you go to, it's a state of being that you align with. And the more you let go of the limiting beliefs and fears that keep you anchored in the 3D, the more you open yourself to the infinite possibilities of the fifth dimension. But breaking through the illusion requires more than just intellectual understanding. It requires embodiment. You need to start living as if you are already connected to your fifth dimensional self. This means making decisions from a place of intuition rather than fear. It means trusting your inner knowing, even when it doesn't make logical sense. It means acting as if the reality you want to create already exists, because in the fifth dimension it does. Let's get practical for a moment. How can you start embodying your fifth dimensional self today? The first step is to cultivate a sense of presence. The third dimension thrives on distraction. It keeps you constantly looking ahead or worrying about the past. But the fifth dimension exists in the now. This is where your parallel self is always guiding you into the present moment, where time collapses and you can access the infinite wisdom of the universe. Start by bringing more awareness to your daily life. Notice when your mind starts to drift into fear, worry, or doubt. Observe these thoughts without judgment, and then bring yourself back to the present moment. Take a deep breath. Feel your body. Ground yourself in the here and now. This simple practice of presence is incredibly powerful because it pulls you out of the 3D illusion and aligns you with the higher frequencies of the fifth dimension. Another powerful practice is to listen to your emotions. Emotions are not just random feelings that come and go, they are messages from your higher self, guiding you toward alignment. When you feel joy, excitement, or peace, that's your fifth dimensional self saying, yes, you're on the right path. When you feel fear, resistance, or frustration, that's a sign that you're still operating from a 3D mindset. Instead of pushing those emotions away, get curious about them. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What belief or pattern is it revealing? As you start to bring more awareness to your thoughts, emotions, and actions, you'll notice something amazing. The world around you begins to shift. Opportunities that once seemed impossible start to appear. Relationships become deeper and more fulfilling. You begin to experience synchronicities, those little coincidences that are actually signs from the universe, guiding you toward your highest potential. But here's the key. You have to stay open. The fifth dimensional version of you is always communicating, always guiding, but it's up to you to listen. The more you dissolve the illusions of the 3D world, the more you'll be able to hear that guidance. And as you continue to expand into the fifth dimension, you'll realize that the limitations you once believed in were never real. They were simply part of the game you were playing in the third dimension. As you begin to dissolve the limitations of the third dimension and step more fully into the fifth dimension, something magical happens. You start to notice synchronicities. These aren't just random coincidences or lucky breaks. They are signs, direct messages from your fifth dimensional self, guiding you toward your highest potential. When you're aligned with this higher state of consciousness, life doesn't feel random anymore. It feels like a series of perfectly timed moments, each one designed to nudge you closer to your purpose. But let's talk about what synchronicity actually means. In the 3D world, we're taught that cause and effect are linear. You do something, and then something happens in response. But in the fifth dimension, time is not linear. It's like an infinite web where everything is connected. Synchronicities are the moments when that web of interconnectedness becomes visible to you. They're like little taps on the shoulder from the universe, reminding you that there is something greater at play, something beyond your immediate understanding. Have you ever experienced a moment where you were thinking of someone, and then they suddenly called or texted you? Or maybe you've been asking for guidance on a particular decision, and then you see a billboard, overhear a conversation, or notice a repeating number that feels strangely relevant. These are not mere coincidences. These are signs from your fifth dimensional self guiding you in real time. But here's the thing, in order to fully benefit from these synchronicities, you have to be awake to them. The fifth dimensional you is always sending messages, but if your mind is too distracted, if you're too caught up in the hustle and bustle of the 3D world, you might miss them. That's why awareness is key. You have to cultivate a mindset that is open, curious, and willing to see beyond the surface of things. Now, let me ask you, when was the last time you noticed a synchronicity in your life? I think about it. Was there a moment recently where something unexpected happened that felt almost too perfect to be random? If you can't think of one, that's okay. It's not because the universe isn't sending you signs, it's because the 3D world has trained you to overlook them. But once you start paying attention, you'll see that these synchronicities are happening all the time. The more you align with your fifth dimensional self, the more frequent and obvious these synchronicities become. It's as if the universe starts speaking directly to you using the language of symbols, numbers, and appearances. You might start seeing repeating numbers like 1111, 333, or 444. Each of these numbers carries specific energetic meanings, and they're often used by your higher self to communicate with you. For example, seeing 1111 is often a reminder that you are in alignment with your soul's purpose. It's a call to wake up and pay attention to the thoughts you're thinking and the actions you're taking. Seeing 333 might indicate that the ascended masters are with you, guiding you on your path. And 444 is often a sign of protection, a reminder that you are being supported by your spiritual team. But synchronicities aren't limited to numbers. They can show up in a variety of ways. Maybe you're contemplating a big life decision, and suddenly a book falls off the shelf at a bookstore, opening to a page that offers the exact wisdom you need. Or maybe you're listening to a song that seems to speak directly to your current situation. These are not accidents. These are intentional communications from your fifth dimensional self designed to guide you. The question is, are you willing to listen? Are you willing to trust that these signs are real and meaningful? The more you trust, the more you'll receive. It's like a feedback loop. The more open you are to receiving guidance, the more guidance you'll notice. And the more guidance you notice, the more aligned you become with your highest path. But here's something important to remember. Synchronicities are not just about passive observation. They are invitations to take action. When you notice a synchronicity, it's not enough to just smile and move on. You have to ask yourself, what is this synchronicity asking me to do? What step am I being guided to take? Whether it's a small action, like reaching out to someone, or a bigger decision, like changing careers or moving to a new place, synchronicities are meant to nudge you in the right direction. So, the next time you experience a synchronicity, take a moment to pause. Reflect on what it means. Ask your fifth dimensional self for clarity. And then, most importantly, take inspired action. The universe is constantly giving you signs, but it's up to you to respond to them. Remember, the fifth dimension is not some far-off place, it's a state of being that you can access right now. And the more you align with this higher state, the more the universe will conspire to help you fulfill your true potential. So, now you're aware of the synchronicities, the signs, and the whispers from your fifth dimensional self. You've started to see how this higher wisdom is guiding you. But the question remains, how do you bring that wisdom into your everyday 3D life? After all, it's one thing to recognize the signs and feel connected to the fifth dimension, but it's another thing entirely to live from that space while still navigating the complexities of the physical world. This is where the real work begins, becoming the bridge between dimensions, integrating the higher guidance you receive into the practical, sometimes messy, reality of day-to-day existence. And here's the secret. The fifth dimension isn't about escaping the 3D world. It's about elevating your experience of it. It's about bringing that higher perspective, that expanded consciousness into every action, decision, and interaction you have. Let me ask you this. How often do you make decisions based on fear? Think about it. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. These are the forces that keep you anchored in the third dimension. But when you start to operate from your fifth dimensional self, fear no longer drives your decisions. Instead, you move from a place of trust, intuition, and inner knowing. You begin to make choices that are aligned with your soul's purpose, even if they don't always make sense to your logical mind. One of the most powerful ways to integrate fifth dimensional wisdom is by practicing discernment. Discernment is the ability to listen deeply to your intuition and distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of your higher self. Often, your higher self will guide you toward decisions that feel expansive, even if they're outside your comfort zone. Fear, on the other hand, will try to keep you small, safe, and contained. The more you practice discernment, the more you'll be able to recognize when you're being guided by your fifth dimensional self and when you're being held back by 3D fears. Another key to integration is to commit to daily practices that anchor you in higher consciousness. Meditation, breathwork, and journaling are incredibly powerful tools for staying connected to the fifth dimension. These practices quiet the mind and allow you to access the deeper wisdom that is always available to you. Even something as simple as 5 minutes of stillness each day can help you realign with your higher self and bring that sense of peace and clarity into your everyday choices. But perhaps the most important part of integrating fifth dimensional wisdom is this: you must act on it. It's not enough to receive guidance, you have to be willing to follow through. This means trusting the nudges you get from your parallel self, even when they seem illogical or risky. It means having the courage to follow your intuition, even when the path ahead feels uncertain. Remember, your fifth dimensional self sees the bigger picture. They know what's best for your soul's evolution, even if your 3D mind can't fully understand it in the moment. So, here's the challenge. The next time you receive a sign, a synchronicity, or an intuitive nudge, act on it. Don't wait for everything to make perfect sense. Don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Trust that the wisdom you're receiving is leading you exactly where you need to go. The more you act on this higher guidance, the more you'll see your 3D life transform into something that reflects the limitless potential of the fifth dimension. And in doing so, you become the bridge. You become the living embodiment of higher wisdom in the physical world. You become someone who doesn't just talk about spiritual truths, but lives them. And that, my friend, is where the real magic happens.